Hello, viewers. Welcome to Bitter Clues. Our story begins in Seongnam, South Korea, where hidden secrets slowly unraveled into a shocking crime. The case began when police received a report from a man and his wife. They said they had been unable to contact the husband's father, 78-year-old Mr. Song, for nearly a month. But when investigators questioned people in the neighborhood, they heard something unexpected. Neighbors and acquaintances said Mr. Song had mentioned going on a trip, and several believed he had already left. To verify this, police checked his phone records. Sure enough, there were calls made from his phone to friends, reassuring them he had gone traveling. Yet strangely, he continued to ignore all attempts by both his family and the police to reach him. Was he deliberately avoiding them? Because Mr. Song was elderly, but reportedly still active and independent, investigators initially considered the possibility of a simple disappearance by choice. But soon, troubling details surfaced. Several acquaintances admitted they had received calls from Mr. Song's number, yet the voice on the other end didn't sound like him at all. It was a younger man who claimed to be Mr. Song and explained that he was away on vacation and couldn't be reached for the time being. When police relayed this to Mr. Song's real son, he was stunned. He had never heard of any such arrangement. It became clear that someone else was in possession of Mr. Song's phone, pretending to be him. This raised serious suspicions, and police launched a full investigation. Digging into his recent life, they uncovered another clue. Shortly before disappearing, Mr. Song had been entangled in a financial dispute. Until May 2012, just 5 months before his disappearance, Mr. Song had run a small bar in Seongnam. He also performed there as a saxophonist. But as he grew older, managing the bar became too burdensome, and he decided to transfer ownership. That's when he met a woman in her 30s, Ms. Kim. They negotiated a deal. She would take over the bar, and Mr. Song would receive 45 million won in return. However, Ms. Kim didn't have the full amount at the time. She paid 25 million won up front and promised to deliver the remaining 20 million later. In any case, Mr. Song stepped away from running the bar. He continued to play saxophone, though, and would drop by the place from time to time for performances. But as weeks passed, Ms. Kim kept postponing the remaining 20 million won. Growing anxious, Mr. Song began pressing her for payment. Nearby shopkeepers later recalled how he often complained. He still hadn't received the balance, and once he did, he planned to quit performing altogether. In other words, he kept showing his face at the bar because he needed that final payment. It also turned out Ms. Kim wasn't running the business alone. She had a partner, Mr. Park, a man in his 40s, with whom she was in a common law relationship. As the dispute over the unpaid balance dragged on, Park stepped in, telling Mr. Song he would come up with the money soon. That promise was never kept. Police checked the records. Even as the missing person investigation progressed, there was no bank evidence that the balance had ever been paid. By now, officers regarded both Miss Kim and Mr. Park as potentially connected to the disappearance. They summoned the pair for questioning. One thing stood out immediately. Their statements were vague. Ms. Kim said, almost dismissively, that her boyfriend Park had agreed to pay the balance, and that she didn't know what happened after that. Park, on the other hand, insisted he had already given Mr. Song the money back in June, claiming there were no outstanding financial ties. So investigators bore down on Park. If he truly paid, when and where did the transaction happen? Park claimed he had paid the balance in cash, which explained why there was no bank record. Police pressed him further. If he withdrew that much money, from which bank and on what date? They pulled CCTV from the supposed withdrawal locations, but there was no sign of either Park or Kim. Still, Park stuck to his story. He insisted he was being treated unfairly, repeating that he had paid the full amount in cash but simply hadn't gotten a receipt. Police strongly suspected him, but without physical proof they couldn't make an arrest. Instead, they dug deeper into his phone records. That's when they found something odd. Just 1 month before the investigation began, on September 13th, Park had hired a contractor to carry out waterproofing work inside the bar. Now, on the surface, renovations weren't suspicious. The place was old enough that repairs might be needed. But what raised eyebrows was what happened afterward. Right after the work was finished, Park deleted the contractor's number from his phone, as if he wanted to erase any trace of the job. Police tracked down the contractor, a man named Mr. Wu, and his testimony was critical. Wu explained that when he was called in, he had been told water was leaking through the walls of the bar's main hall. To fix the problem, he first had to tear out sections of the wall before resealing it. But then, before he could finish the job, Park made a very strange request. He asked Wu to place a large wooden box inside the wall cavity and then seal it over with fresh concrete. Wu admitted he hesitated. The box was unusually big, and the request didn't sit right with him. The contractor pointed out that if the box was sealed inside the wall, that section would bulge outward and look awkward. But Park didn't care. Curious, Mr. Wu asked what was inside the box. Park replied that it was filled with moisture-absorbing materials, supposedly to help with dampness. He even offered extra money if Wu would just do as instructed. With little reason to refuse, Wu completed the work. And so, the mysterious wooden box was entombed in the wall. That day, Park never left the site, not even for a moment. He stood watch the entire time, keeping his eyes fixed on the box. To mask any odor, he sprayed air freshener around the area and told Wu, "Please make sure this is done properly." For Wu, who had handled countless construction jobs, this was unlike anything he'd ever seen. He remembered every detail clearly, and it struck investigators as highly suspicious. Police moved quickly. They went straight to the bar and inspected the walls. Sure enough, one section stuck out oddly, not aligned with the rest. Officers began tearing it open. Inside, they uncovered a large wooden box, roughly 113 centimeters long, 40 centimeters wide, and 80 centimeters tall. It was sealed almost airtight, its edges carefully lined with silicone, every seam reinforced. The box resembled a crude coffin. Cautiously, police pried it open. Inside was a travel suitcase, and within that suitcase, wrapped tightly in layers of plastic, was the body of Mr. Song. On November 13th, police arrested Park. With the body recovered and testimony confirming he had personally sealed the box into the wall, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Under questioning, Park eventually confessed to the murder. According to his statement, the killing took place on September 6th. That day, Park and Mr. Song met alone at the bar. The issue, as always, was the unpaid balance of $20 million won. Park claimed he handed over $17 million in cash, but when Song demanded the remaining $3 million, Park refused. He argued that he had used that money to install a sprinkler system in the bar, something he felt was necessary for operations. Since it was, in his words, a repair the former owner should have handled, he insisted the cost be deducted from the debt. But Song was furious. "Nonsense. Pay me the full amount we agreed on," he demanded. Their voices grew louder, the argument escalating. Park claimed that during the fight, Song insulted Kim, the woman living with him as a common-law wife. Enraged, Park struck the elderly man hard. Song fell to the ground, but Park didn't stop there. He pressed his foot down on Song's neck until the old man went limp and stopped moving. Overcome with rage, Park had killed him. But now he faced another problem: what to do with the body. At first, he stuffed the corpse into a travel suitcase and left it hidden in the bar's storage room. He continued running the bar as if nothing had happened. But soon, employees began to complain. "Boss, something smells awful in the storeroom." As the body decomposed, the stench spread. Park grew desperate. But hauling a large suitcase out of the bar would surely be caught on CCTV, and that would be incriminating evidence. He couldn't risk it. More than anything, the suitcase was simply too heavy for Park to move alone. In the end, the safest place he could think of was right there in the bar itself. Experts say this isn't unusual. Criminals sometimes hide bodies in places they control, places they can keep in sight, because it makes them feel more secure. So Park began searching for a suitable spot inside the bar. It wasn't easy. Customers and employees came and went every day. But after much thought, he came up with a plan: the wall and a wooden box. He built the box, stuffed the suitcase with the body inside, then carefully sealed every gap with silicone to contain the smell. Finally, he summoned a contractor under the pretense of waterproofing work and had the box entombed inside the wall. Once the job was done, Park calmly resumed business as usual. For weeks, patrons and staff enjoyed drinks and music, unaware that a body lay hidden just behind the wall. Meanwhile, Park used other tricks to delay suspicion. He had stolen Mr. Song's phone and made calls to acquaintances, pretending to be Song's son, claiming the old man was away on a trip. That deception is what bought him nearly a month before the real son finally realized his father had vanished. Park also sold off all of Song's saxophones, the instruments he had once used to perform, and even impersonated him in calls to the landlord, arranging to have the business license transferred into Kim's name. He went to great lengths to cover up the crime. In court, Park insisted the killing was accidental. He claimed he only tightened his grip on Song's neck in the heat of the moment. That claim raised many questions. Was there truly no murderous intent before that day? Could we really accept that he'd suddenly handed over $17 million in cash and then killed the man only after a spontaneous argument? Even if we grant Park the benefit of the doubt and call the homicide impulsive, other facts remain hard to explain. Who, having murdered someone, would then hide the body inside a wall in a busy public venue? Prosecutors argued the crime was far from unplanned. It was deliberate and cruel. They sought a 20-year prison term for Park. After trial, Park was ultimately sentenced to 18 years in prison. During the investigation, authorities discovered Park was no stranger to crime. He had a record of 12 prior offenses, including theft and fraud. Although he had no previous murder convictions, some observers felt 18 years was still a light sentence given the brutality and the attempt to conceal the body. Questions also lingered about Miss Kim, who became the legal owner of the business. Was she truly uninvolved? Police investigated whether she had any complicity, but reported that they found no concrete evidence linking her to the crime. The thought of a corpse hidden inside a wall, behind a place where customers and staff come and go, is chilling. Could such a secret ever remain undetected? Experts point out that as a body decomposes, it produces gases. That internal pressure causes the body to bloat, which can lead to telltale bulging or noises, and often releases odors despite attempts to seal it. In this case, the smell and other signs eventually alerted employees, and helped unravel the plot. Eventually, the wooden board sealing the wall would have rotted, and cracks would have spread through the concrete. Inevitably, the truth would have surfaced. In the end, Park's scheme was nothing more than a shallow trick. There is no such thing as a perfect crime. Over the years of covering countless cases, I've seen every imaginable attempt at hiding a body. Deserted fields, riverbanks, wells, even stuffed into rubber barrels or buried inside traditional clay jars. The methods vary, some bizarre, some desperate. But the conclusion has always been the same. No matter how clever the cover-up, the truth always comes out. A perfect crime simply doesn't exist. Until next time, be safe.